Hello there. Sometimes people talk about financial literacy meaning power, right? It gives you power, it empowers people. But what does it mean that financial literacy is power? That's what we'll be discussing in today's video. What we'll be discussing in this video then are the four parts of financial literacy and how each of those empower you. That's really what we're going to be discussing today. So we'll be talking about debt and investing and savings and budgeting and all those things with a specific focus on how that gives you power and freedom and control over your life. I'm going to begin by telling the story of a brother and sister, because within that story, we're going to kind of see what we're going to be talking about with some of the details. And they were both, brother and sister, were involved in the medical field. One was a paramedic, so he's dealing with emergency situations. He's very well known for his calm under pressure, right? Shows up in an accident, and he's got things, he's together, man. He's got it together. And his sister, who also got on the medical field, but she was a nurse working at a regular doctor's office, right? So she's not even in those emergency situations. Both of them earned decent income as nurses and a paramedic, living in the same town, but one had much more financial power, and that was the younger sister, who, when her car broke down, it needed major repairs, she was able to decide that, okay, it's time to get rid of that car. I'm going to buy a used car, another used car. Dipped in her savings, was able to do that. And her brother, when his rent went up, he struggled because all of a sudden he hadn't been saving well. He wasn't in the habit of saving. He wasn't in the habit of managing his finances well. And now he didn't have things as savings, and the stress of his finances was impacted much more than the on-the-job stress. And it really boiled down to the application of financial literacy. So there's something for us to take from that, in that the younger sister had a lot more power over her own life and control to deal with the financial stresses that so many people, when we go through life, experience, while her older brother, it was wrecking him. It was making his life far more stressful than the stressful job that he was in. All right, so the first area that we talked about, I've talked about in other videos, is budgeting. So let's take our two brother and sister situation again. The sister was very good about budgeting. She used an app, she had her programs, she regularly kept track of where the money was going. She knew what was coming in, she knew what was going out, and she easily kept track of it. While her brother didn't. Like, he got the money, automatic deposit, he was taking out stuff for like his 401k and insurance and that stuff. And then, he spent rent, and he started spending money, put things on credit card. He really wasn't following a spending plan. So when the rent went up, whoa, he's feeling it now, because he's developed these bad habits about what things he was doing, his lifestyle. He's still trying to live some of those lifestyles, but he didn't really have the money. While his sister was able to handle that car change of the car payment, because she knew where the money was going and she knew what she could take it out of, and she worked a budget. So that living by a budget, having a habit around managing a budget, was empowering for the sister. Not having one was disempowering for the brother. So the other difference between the two of them, and it was built off the budgeting habit and knowing where your money was going, was this idea of paying yourself first, which is what the sister did and the brother did not. Paying yourself first is this idea of saving. Right? So some people argue you don't just pay yourself first, you pay Uncle Sam, and you should give money away. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So there's three people, if you will, that you want to pay first. There's Uncle Sam, there's yourself, And then there's God or charity, right? There's that idea of giving away, giving to somebody else. You do those three things first, and part of that is that savings. So you'll see that it'll grow slowly. Sometimes it's hard when you're first starting out to see that grow, especially if you get a few setbacks along the way. But the consistency of that, in knowing that, and looking at your future forecast, can be empowering, uplifting. When you see that, oh man, if I keep at this, this money is going to become this amount in 6 months, this amount in a year. When you don't have that budgeting habit and that putting it away, paying yourself first, and you get those bank statements, and sometimes, yes, those little statements that say you just overdrew your account, that it doesn't feel good. That's that stress, that's that emotional stress. That's what was happening to the older brother. When you are in those feelings of stress, the emotions of stress, whether it's financial or otherwise, but because we're talking about the money, when you're dealing with that regularly, right? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, because you haven't been managing your money well, and you're living in that stress on a daily basis, it wears you down. It's not empowering by any stretch of the imagination. You actually become a slave to that debt. When you aren't paying yourself first, building those savings, you're much more likely to begin to accumulate debt. Credit, right? You get credit cards, which builds up that debt and the interest that goes on them. And then if you want to buy a house or something, a big purchase like that, inevitably you're going to have debt, right? Credit. And that credit is long-term credit. Many have student loan debts that it takes 10, 15 years to pay off. Home mortgages. There's some experts like a Dave Ramsey who doesn't say anybody should get a mortgage more than 15 years because the amount of interest is so much. For I would say probably most people in most parts of this country, that doesn't even seem practical to me. Is that low? It's a great idea, but then there's that practicality of it. There was a time, I still remember working with a woman she was a few years older than me. We worked together for 14 years, side by side in school classroom. And when she was a girl, her father basically taught that you paid cash for things, right? Like you didn't go into debt. You didn't have credit cards and use that sort of thing. Your credit was your good name. And she remembers that they wouldn't build a bathroom in their house until he was able to pay for it in cash, right? That's a mindset and a mentality that many in that older generation lived through, right? Now, not all not all borrowing is necessarily bad. If it's really designed as an opportunity to create more wealth, that's one thing. But for the vast majority of us, that's not it at all. So with the paying yourself first, building up that savings, the idea is you get to a certain level of savings, some say between 3 and 6 months of your income in savings so that you can use that. Then you want to really start investing. Now, a lot of companies now and even government will offer or give you an opportunity to invest like 401ks or a retirement program automatically taken out of your account. And they match it to certain percentages. Absolutely should do that. All right. You should probably even go beyond that, especially if it's less than 10%. You should be going and doing more than that. You should be doing at least 10%. And now, depending on your risk tolerance and how much you want to actually try to manage that yourself, will depend on how you go about investing. There's lots of ways to invest. You can invest in stocks and bonds and gold and silver and real estate. You can invest in your own business. You can invest in multiple ways. There's some principles, right? The more diverse your investment portfolio is, the safer it is, but probably the lower returns. The less diverse, the greater the risk, but potentially the greater for greater returns. So you got to analyze your risk tolerance. But investing is something you really need to do. It's not even really something that you should contemplate not doing. Like you need to invest your money. You just need to figure out the best way to do that based on your personality and your risk tolerance. So we just wrapped up another video, and I would love to get your comments. I want you to subscribe to our channel. We have more videos all the time. And when you subscribe, you're helping us get that message out, because more people begin to see our YouTube videos. And the more people who see them, we know that just by numbers that the people who need to see them are going to begin to see them. So help us out by subscribing, but also the leaving the comments and sharing the link, asking somebody else to, hey, check this video out. All that is so very helpful. I encourage you to do that, and then come back and visit us again.